state of emergency to be extended to June 29th. The Finance Minister delivers the 2020-2021 budget communication. We've got team coverage. Plus, the Foxville community rocked by an early morning murder.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thank you for joining us. I'm Kyle Joaquim. A big day in Parliament as the Minister administration presented its budget communication for the 2020-2021 fiscal year amid a global health and economic crisis. We've got team coverage tonight of the highlights of that communication delivered by the Finance Minister and public reaction. But first, we begin with an announcement by Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis that the state of emergency will be extended to the end of June.
Special Provisions Order 2020 made on the 30th of March 2020 until the 29th of June 2020.
The announcement comes as the country remains under 24-hour curfew and weekend lockdowns. While many businesses have already reopened, offering curbside services, despite the country remaining in Phase 1B of reopening, the relaxing of more restrictions is expected to come Thursday morning at 10 a.m. during an address from Parliament.
But more details would be given tomorrow as to the layout as we continue to progress along our Phase 1, Phase 1B, Phase 2, 3, as we continue to advance.
The state of emergency has been in place for 2.5 months now. According to Minnis, the country is on the right track in terms of reopening amid the COVID-19 fight. There have been 100 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the Bahamas, with 11 deaths. The Prime Minister says as the country aims to move through the phases of reopening and eventually open its borders for international travel on July 1st, his address Thursday morning will speak to the way forward for the month of June.
We recognize that individuals who have been under lockdown curfew order for some time, and we think we're on the right track. We think we're in good stead if we were to further liberalize the Bahamas, that is both New Providence, Grand Bahama, and other family islands.
Some political observers have questioned the rationale behind the decision to extend the emergency orders. The opposition has called for an end to the lockdowns and said the Prime Minister appears to enjoy the power of being the competent authority.
We support the opening immediately of Exuma, Eleuthera, Barry Islands, and San Salvador. He did not speak to this today. I hope that he will speak to it tomorrow. The leader of the opposition is on record as saying that we will not support the extension. We believe that the competent authority has not competently performed the duties of the competent authority, and we can no longer support it.
Well, the Minnis administration will seek parliamentary approval to borrow $1.3 billion in the 2020-2021 fiscal year. In his budget communication today, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Peter Turnquist said the fiscal deficit is budgeted at some $1.3 billion or 11.6% of GDP. For the details, we go to Jasmine Brown.
That's right, Kyle. The Deputy Prime Minister spent much of his communication outlining the country's fiscal situation, as he also revealed what the Minnis administration plans on doing about it. However, the DPM revealed one of those plans is borrowing $1.3 billion.
Now, therefore, that this House, 1, authorizes the Minister of Finance to raise by way of loan or loans the sum of $1,334,243,433.
That was Turnquist tabling the resolution that authorizes the Minister of Finance to raise by way of loan just over $1.3 billion. Turnquist told parliamentarians that the 2020-2021 budget is unlike any budget the Bahamas has ever seen before, as he insisted the past 9 months have been unlike anything the country has ever experienced due to Hurricane Dorian and the COVID-19 pandemic.
We expect to run a deficit of some $1.3 billion.
The Deputy Prime Minister added that the corresponding government debt level is expected to rise to nearly $9.5 billion in the next fiscal year. That equates to roughly 82.8% of GDP. He explained that the unprecedented fiscal deficit is due in part to flat revenue collections and increased expenditure. He said revenue is expected to decline to $2.1 billion and expenditure is expected to rise to $2.8 billion at the end of the 2019-2020 fiscal year.
There will be no tax increase. While there may be reductions in head count due to retirements and expiring contracts for consultants and services, there will be no public sector layoffs.
He also called the budget a difficult but necessary one.
The alternative approach and options are much worse. It is a lot easier to keep a person afloat than fighting to drive them back to the surface.
Now, the Deputy Prime Minister also outlined tax relief and social assistance measures during his communication today. Vonique Toot has that angle. Vonique.
Thanks, Jasmine. Noting that dramatic cuts in government spending would result in a further contraction of the economy, which he says is already in a weakened state, the finance minister laid out several tax relief measures, including a 2-week VAT holiday ahead of the new school year.
The government will provide for a back-to-school VAT holiday on school supplies, clothing, and selected food items for the 2 weeks leading to the reopening of schools.
For the agriculture and fisheries industry, government will reduce the duty on fishing materials from 45% to 20% effective July 1st. Duty on farming equipment for the use of backyard farming will be reduced from 25% to 10%. To spur construction activity, government will slash duty on all building materials to 20%. Turnquest also announced efforts to support Hurricane Dorian recovery.
We will extend the Special Economic Recovery Zone Relief Order 2019 to December 2020 in the first instance, which will include all concessions currently available to the qualifying islands.
Government is also removing the duty from examination gloves, which are used as personal protective equipment for 1 year, as well as gowns and other surgical supplies. Additionally, $250 million has been allocated to extend and expand COVID-19 economic support measures implemented in early March.
$48 million for continued unemployment assistance for persons who remain dislocated. $17 million in increased social welfare spending to provide expanded food assistance through the government's food voucher initiative, as well as to support the expansion of other support programs at the Ministry of Social Services. As a new measure, we will also fund a temporary incremental monthly increase of $50 in the old age pension.
Government will also increase its allocation to national health insurance by $18 million. And in an effort to reduce spending, 72% of government agencies will see a budget cut.
Eliminated the assignment of red plate vehicles to ministers in order to utilize them in other areas of the public service. You can tell me. Canceled all international travel, except in essential and exceptional circumstances. Ended the practice of the House of Assembly providing breakfast and lunch. Reduced a number of allocations on discretionary items. Some 42 out of 58 agencies represented in the budget will see a reduction in their budgetary allocations this year.
The official opposition wasted no time giving its feedback to today's budget communication. For that angle, we throw things over to Berthany McDermott. Berthany?
Thanks, Vonique. Well, PLP Deputy Leader Chester Cooper coming out of the gate swinging, calling this year's budget communication uninspiring and unimaginable.
It was the worst budget communication in living memory.
Cooper hit out at the Minister administration's decision to borrow $1.3 billion, predicting that government will have to enter into a structured lending program before the next general election.
And now we find ourselves in the embrace of the IMF. We are hand in hand, having to accept its no-strings-attached offer And this is usually where it begins.
He didn't stop there. Cooper also slammed government's fiscal decisions since taking office, charging that the current grim fiscal situation is no one's fault but the government's.
When you hear IMF, I want you to remember that IMF stands for It's Minutes' Fault.
He noted that in less than 3 years, the Minutes administration borrowed more than $3 billion gross and close to $1.5 billion net. Instead of borrowing to pay bills, he said government could have borrowed to invest in agriculture and fisheries. He added that the Minutes administration failed in dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian and failed to implement fiscal measures during the COVID-19 pandemic, which the PLP outlined months ago. As for duty restrictions mentioned by the finance minister, Cooper says they don't cut it.
And building supplies should have been reduced years ago to spur construction and make home ownership more affordable. The possibility of new fees due to cut in subventions to state-owned enterprises now puts the burden on the public to fund entities the government should have had the courage to restructure.
Additionally, Cooper says the intended investment in food security is too little and 3 years too late.
So where are the plans for Grand Bahama and Abaco? These islands need structured assistance and can be drivers of a national rebound.
Now, the opposition contends that this budget will not move the country forward. Our Giorgio Bain standing by with reaction from the public and business community. Giorgio?
That's right, Berthany. The business community and the public saying that they're not surprised by the government's intention to borrow over $1 billion following today's budget communication. Now, while some say they found the amount a bit hefty, some say they weren't surprised given the effects of Hurricane Dorian and the COVID-19 pandemic. Donnell Brown said the budget communication left her with several questions, including how the $1.3 billion in borrowed funds will be realistically spent.
If they have a comprehensive plan how to get this $1 billion back, then yeah, but I mean, I think the only comprehensive plan they would have is try to tax me and you. So it's too much and it ain't enough in the same breath.
However, this resident insisted the Bahamas is not the only cash-strapped country at this time, and the government has to do what it has to do.
Every country needs money, man. You know, and money was only made to use, you know. Yeah, money is a viable tool, man. Money, that's like a hammer nail.
Leader of the Democratic National Alliance, Orinthia Komolafe, labeled it as a crisis management budget, adding it lacked a true commitment to the diversification of the Bahamian economy. The financial expert noted some positives for the business community, but said the funds must be used in the right areas.
The extension of the commitments that they made to businesses in the aftermath of COVID and the $55 million given toward small businesses.
Komolafe added Hurricane Dorian restoration efforts should not have been included in the budget out of a fear that they will now be overlooked.
What was even more disappointing in the budget was that it seemed as though the restoration efforts and the recovery efforts for Abaco and for Grand Bahama were rolled into this budget exercise, which is very unfortunate because it means that those efforts are going to get lost in the midst of just trying to buffer the economy due to the fallout from COVID-19.
The budget was an opportunity to hit the reset button, according to Komolafe, and an opportunity to do more to invest in food security and solar technology. She said what was shocking was neither the government or the opposition took a step she expected them to take.
None of them asked or committed toward cutting their own salaries, parliamentary salary cuts or cabinet ministers' cuts.
At the end of the day, this resident said there is nothing anyone can do about today's budget communication.
What you gonna do about it? You gonna stop them from doing it? How you gonna do that? That's what I wanna know. Once you vote them in, you understand me what I'm saying? They gonna make decisions for you. And that's why you put them there. They now become your representative. You mark the X for them to represent. Now, whether they represent you right or whether they represent you wrong, it's because of your X.
Now, while a lot was said from the public and the business community, some said that they will just wait for Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis's communication in the House of Assembly tomorrow. For our news, I'm Giorgio Bain. Back to you in the studio, Kyle.
All right, thanks, Giorgio. Well, a double shooting in Fox Hill has left one man dead and a woman nursing injuries. Authorities say the incident happened around 9 a.m., leaving a mother distraught. Jillian Gray has more.
The mother of the latest homicide victim was inconsolable as her son was hauled away. Family members rushed to the side of the mother of the murder victim, who cried out as she watched her son's body be loaded into the back of a hearse. Before that, she paced back and forth talking with officers, trying to find out if her son was still alive. Tommy, wake up! Wake up! Wake up! According to police, the shooting took place shortly before 9 a.m. Wednesday.
Shortly before 9 a.m. this morning, a female and male were driving on Lumumba Lane when they were approached by a black vehicle that opened fire on them, hitting both occupants about the body. The driver was able to drive to the Fox Hill police station. While at the Fox Hill police station, the passenger succumbed to his injuries. The driver was transported to hospital.
Candy Gibson, founder of the Families of All Murder Victims, consoled the man's mother as she became overcome with grief. Gibson said it's sad that during this pandemic the mother may not get to bury her son in traditional form.
You know, it's so sad that you gotta constantly come to communities that are now turning into cemeteries. Families are broken. And then, you know, it's so sad when your loved one is murdered during this time, only you can have 10 people to their funeral. How does mommy supposed to grieve?
Gibson, who has her own story of loss, became emotional as she reflected on how the young man's mother just donated to her organization a few days earlier. She appealed to young men in the community to stop the violence.
And so we're asking mothers, you know, today this mother lost a child. Please pray for her. And those who know her, please come by your side, man. Just keep this family in prayers because they're broken.
Officers are asking anyone with information on this latest homicide to contact them via 502-9991 or Crime Stoppers. Reporting for our news, I'm Jillian Gray.
All right, thanks, Jillian. Still to come, 2 web shops suing the government. Plus, government to cut certain subventions. Stay tuned. Two web shop chains have filed lawsuits against the government over its decision to keep Numbers houses closed. Attorneys for Island Game and Paradise Games filed a lawsuit in the Supreme Court today. Wayne Monroe, QC, who represents both web shops, says it's really about the legitimacy of the Emergency Powers Act.
We say that they were made ultra vires the Emergency Powers Act. Even a layman, you can look at the Emergency Powers Act, Section 3, and see that it doesn't give the Governor General power to make regulations for matters related to public health. And so these regulations relate to public health. And our contention is that he can't make regulations. Parliament can pass laws.
Web shop owners have said the government's decision to allow other businesses like liquor stores to operate through curbside services but keep web shops closed is discriminatory and can affect thousands of people employed in the industry. Monroe says the order that speaks to this is not justifiable because there is no special risk related to COVID-19 transmission at web shops operating through curbside.
The stupidity of the government's action is to say COVID-19 hangs out at the curbside at gaming houses, but not at liquor stores, not at any other store. They only hang out at the curbside of liquor stores. I would like to see the medical opinion that says that. I would look forward to cross-examine the doctor who thinks that that stupidness could stand scrutiny.
Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest says the Minutes administration will seek to make substantial reductions in subventions allocated to state-owned enterprises. Turnquest said they are looking to save millions while at the same time push SOEs to become self-sufficient.
We have targeted a $100 million annual reduction in subventions over the next 4 years as these entities move to optimize efficiency and cost recovery strategies.
Turnquest explained that the Minnis administration has had to speed up its plans to reform state-owned enterprises, as he pointed out that for the fiscal year 2019-2020, SOE subventions represented nearly 16% of recurrent expenditure.
All state-owned enterprises to implement a mix of cost savings and revenue enhancement measures this budget year. As a result, we are budgeting to receive some 10%, or roughly $21 million in savings from a decrease in subventions to these entities.
Still to come, an F&M MP backpedals on his inquiry request. Stay tuned. You're watching Our News. Welcome back. Central and South Abaco MP James Albury is backpedaling on his call for an inquiry into the process and timeliness of the recent Abaco burials of 55 Hurricane Dorian victims. Albury had penned a letter to the Prime Minister over the weekend calling for answers regarding the 9-month process since the storm. However, today, Albury seemed to have backtracked, saying he has since spoken with the Prime Minister and is satisfied with the response he has gotten.
My concerns were just mainly getting an understanding. It was not to cast aspersions or blame on anyone. It's more about just seeking answers rather than casting blame. And that's all I was really looking for. I was looking for answers. And what I will say is I think the DR press conference did answer a lot of those questions. So as far as me calling for an inquiry, that was certainly not, a lot of different phrases are used. I was more seeking answers, which I believe we've gotten and will continue to get.
Since his letter was released, Albury has been criticized by some Abaco residents as well as the opposition, who called for him to resign. However, he said his words were not meant to be used as an open rebuke to the Prime Minister nor the DRA, and that he hopes he is still in good standing with the F&M.
If you would have read my letter, it was not in any sort of derogatory or inflammatory way, and I certainly never would have meant it to come across as such. So that is what it is at this moment. I'm satisfied right now with the way things are, and hopefully moving forward we'll continue to learn from the process.
A flight scheduled to bring stranded Bahamians back home on Friday has been postponed. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs advised persons who made reservations for the Bahamas Air flight from Fort Lauderdale to Nassau that it has been postponed to a later date for administrative reasons. Officials say the postponement will give those who wish to return additional time to get a COVID-19 test from an accredited facility. Still to come, a community group donates to inner city residents. Stay tuned. Finally, in news tonight, residents of Nassau Village were treated to breakfast this morning by the Future of Our Neighborhoods community group. Food usually feeds residents every Saturday. However, the weekend lockdowns forced them to switch to weekdays.
to COVID-19's impact, especially in urban areas, we see that both breadwinners who would normally contribute to the household and to the development of the household find themselves without any employment. So now we see a new stress and a new strain where there are problems with actually paying rent or paying mortgage. So most people devote those finances to the payment of rent and mortgage, and they find themselves short with the essentials such as food. So I think that all food outreach at this time are extremely essential and vital.
Strawn, who lives in Nassau Village, said he started the community group to help residents. He added the plan is to continue their programs, including a garbage cleanup initiative and youth programs.
We'll continue with the breakfast outreach, and we will find ourselves in the community again once we get the clear from the competent authority that we're able to engage persons socially. We'll find ourselves doing more socially conscious programs, especially for the youth, because if you look behind me, you see extremely young kids who will now be developing into citizens of the Bahamas. So it's essential to us that their development is right and correct.
Thank you for joining us for Our News tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Kyle Joaquin. Remember, you can catch Our News on the go or the Ref Go Play app. Have a good Wednesday evening, Bahamas.